folks, and welcome to this week's show. Today, as you can see, we're going to be focusing on the albums of the magnificent Radiohead. This is a little bit different because we've got two new guests today. We've got Rod and we've got Jeremy. So today we're officially transatlantic. Jeremy's from New York. So this should be fun. Like normal, before we sort of dive in terms of doing the ranking, I always like to ask people sort of how they got into certain acts and stuff, you know. So we'll go in a circular structure. So we'll start with you, Rod. How did you sort of get into Radiohead?
Quite late, really, because I'm 60, so I'm a bit atypical, really, because you should be into bands between 18, 25, you know, sort of thing. And I am. Don't get me wrong. The Clash, seeing them live, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, envious.
But you know, Radiohead were obviously a 90s band, and I was in my 30s and had kids then. And I knew of them when the Bends came out, but I didn't really listen to them until OK Computer came out. I bought the CD. I had a job where I commuted quite a long way, and I listened to it just endlessly, back and forth for about a year at this job, the printing company that I worked at. I just listened to it all the time, and it just clicked, and I just found it sublime, and I just immersed myself in it for, like I say, just the whole journey there and back. Just loved it, and ever since then, it's just been a growing love, really, from that point, I suppose.
That's good stuff. That's nice to hear, actually, and it just proves that as we get older, we don't just sort of stick to a set series of bands either. You know, we do try and sort of look for other stuff. Jeremy, how about you then?
Well, I'm only a year or two younger than Rod. I also came to them late, however, because I saw them doing Creep, I think on the David Letterman show, and I thought it was pretty bad and kind of a Nirvana ripoff. Was not interested. They just seemed to be tryhards. I did not pay any attention to the next album. OK Computer, I had a friend who was a strong advocate. He gave me a disc of it or put it on tape or something. And I listened to it and I thought it was interesting, but didn't hold together. So it was actually several more years until I was listening to the radio, and it was this show called All Songs Considered, and he was talking about Tom York's solo album, The Eraser. And it was kind of funny because he sort of put it down and said, I know a lot about electronic music, and this isn't great electronic music, but the snippet he played sounded really good to me. So I listened to that and I loved it and I bought it. Next thing you know, In Rainbows came out with the Pay What You Will scheme. So I dived into that and became obsessed at that point and worked my way all the way back through the entire catalog over the years, and was lucky enough to see them back in 2011. I've also seen York in Atoms for Peace and most recently in The Smile. So I consider myself a big fan, but not an uncritical one.
Yeah, good stuff. Nice to hear. For me, it was, I remember watching, it used to be on TV shows a lot in the UK in about 93, 94. There used to be them in Oasis for some reason as they were the upcoming things, and they were constantly on this show that used to be shown late at night in Northwest TV when I was at university. And then when I went to Leeds, I listened to the Bends, and I actually got into the Bends. It was the first album that I got into, and I really, really liked it. And probably from that moment onwards, I sort of really got into them, you know. I think they're a great, I genuinely think they're a great band. I don't think, maybe it's been showing me age, I don't think there's been that many great bands over the last 25 years or so. But I do think they are definitely one of them. So there we have it. So that's my story and our stories there. Okay, folks, so as you can see on the screen now as well, we've got the rankings there in terms of the albums. So before we do the countdown to the big nine, you can read them there. So a 5-star album is a masterpiece. We may have some today, we may not. 4.5 is essential. 4 was excellent. 3.5 is very good. 3 stars good. 2.5 fair. 2 weak. 1.5 very poor, 1 awful, 0.5 don't bother. I'd be very surprised if we got a 0.5. I think there's only 1 or 2 albums so far have reached that appalling status, but we shall see. So let's crack on then. So Rod, what have you got in it? Number 9.
Shock horror. Pablo Honey is number 9 for me.
Right, yeah.
Which, like I say, is probably not a surprise. It's one of those albums. It's a good album. There's some good tracks on it. I mean, I quite like Anyone Can Play Guitar, Stop Whispering, Ripcord. There's some signs on there, I think, that just some of the guitar sounds, if you listen carefully, are kind of, I mean, now you know what they are and what they became. There are little signs there, I think. They're just a bit like of the time, I think, if you like, wasn't it? Because like you said, they came out in that kind of grungy, Brit poppy kind of, Suede, Pulp, and all those sort of bands, Oasis, and they were sort of kind of in that envelope, but not quite, and it doesn't quite work, but it's a kind of decent album, But like saying that, you listen, if someone listened to that album at the time or around that time, then you'd absolutely no idea what they'd become on the back of that album.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Right, interest. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that, Rod? Are you okay with that?
No, I'd probably keep that album brief because, like I say, there's 2, 3, 4 tracks that I quite like.
Yeah.
Creep's obviously Creep, which they don't like, but they don't like it because they're Radiohead, aren't they, as well? So although they played it at Glastonbury and 70,000 people sang every word at the top of their voice, so it's all right not liking a song, but if it resonates to that degree with your core audience, why not play it? That'd be
so how many stars are we going here then?
Yeah, probably 3. Yeah, good. It's a good album.
All right, okay, interesting.
I'll give it probably 3 stars. Yeah.
Straight in. All right, Jeremy, how about you then? What have you got at 9?
No surprise, my number 9 is also Pablo Honey. I did review it again today, just went through the whole album, and there are signs. It's not absolutely awful, but a lot of it is kind of undistinctive. The talent of the players comes through. They all know how to play their instruments quite well. Johnny Greenwood is showing signs of being a distinctive guitarist. Tom York is not quite in his voice. He sort of goes from here to there in different songs, sort of seem trying to find his way. When I tried to pick out songs that I liked, in the end, strangely enough, Creep, it holds up. It's improved with age, I think. And it reminded me of a time last summer when I went to a concert in Central Park. And on my way there, I heard a busker singing Creep with acoustic guitar. And I was like, you know what? That doesn't sound bad. And then a soul singer named Danielle Ponder sang an operatic version of Creep during the concert. And I was like, this song actually hits. So, and the other song I kind of liked was Blowout, which I think, shows a bit of a suite-like structure that they might employ later on, has a little more open space in the beginning, and just seems to show a little more mastery of what they could do in the studio. But on the whole, I gave it 2. I think it's a weak album.
Yeah.
And, nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And surprise, surprise, my number 9 is Pablo Honey. It's odd, isn't it? It's good to see that a band were given the opportunity to progress, because nowadays some bands wouldn't get the chance to make the second album. Although, of course, Pablo Honey was actually a big album. It was quite big in America. I was shocked when I read how many copies they actually sold at the time on the back of Creep. Which I'm going to put it out there, and this is maybe controversial. I hate Creep with an absolute passion. And the reason why I hate it is I was in a band at the time, and about 1991, I wrote a song with basically the same chords, a slow rhythmic sort of thing. And for years, I always thought, there's a song called Walking with Slow Steps, by the way, if anybody wants to steal the title. And for years, I always thought, yeah, no, I'm absolutely good at it. It's so similar. And then years later, it was only a couple of years ago, I read that they got done for copyright off the Hollies for The Air That I Breathe. Yeah. And then, of course, you go, of course it is. Of course it is. And I felt such a sense of relief. It's which when I found out. So that's maybe my bitterness for that song. But it's just a song I'm sick of hearing it. It's just a bit of a meh album, isn't it? As you say, it's not really the band that they became anywhere near. They're stuck in that sort of group of bands unsure of what they wanted to do, whether they're trying to hit onto the latest fad or the previous fad. 93, 94, 93 in particular was sort of a crossover, wasn't it? Yeah, between sort of the grungy, the death of grunge, the beginning of Britpop, and they're neither here nor there, aren't they? I do like the song How Do You? I think it's a really good song. I like that. I liked Blowout. But the rest I've just wrote, it's a bit of a bland album. It's trying to be edgy. but it's just not really doing it for me. And I've given it, if I'm generous, I'm giving it 2 stars. It's just a bit, which says a lot, really. So there we go. So we've all gone Pablo Honey, folks. So
yeah. Did Prince cover? Prince did a Creep, didn't he?
I think he did. I think he did.
Coachella, I think.
Yeah, Prince did. He's done loads of great covers. Prince. I've seen him a number of times. He did some fantastic covers. Right, Rod. What have you got at number 8?
Sorry, Jeremy.
What?
Sorry.
I was
what?
just saying it was late in Prince's career when he did that cover, not too long before he died, I think.
Is that right?
Is that right? Oh,
I didn't know that.
I love Prince.
Sorry. Sorry, I interjected there.
No, it's all right. Don't apologize. Right, Rod. What have you got at number 8?
Well, number 8, I've got the album that's closest to that, really, in their canon, which is the Bends is 8 for me, because it's a rock.
That'll cause some controversy. Go on.
It's a rock album, you know, and there's nothing wrong with a rock album, but it's not as interesting as any of the other albums to me, you know, just as songs. That there's great Street Spirit. I don't want to give away if we do a top songs thing, but Street Spirit to me stands up with any of their songs personally, even though it's from that second album. It's almost like it's the last track, and it's almost like it kind of promises you what might come afterwards to me, because it's kind of got an epicness, the build, and you know the immerse your soul in love thing, and it's kind of better than everything else on the album to me. And obviously, Fake Plastic Trees and Just is a kind of chaotically fabulous song, really. And My Iron Lungs, a good rocky song by them, I think. They're probably my 4 favorite tracks on it. But there's ones I'm not fond of, really. Black Star, Sulk, you know, they're okay, but it's a little bit. It's just, I'd give it 3.5. No, 4, probably 4 stars, probably. I think.
Oh, we've jumped right up to 4. Wow.
Well, 4. Well, because I'm a Radiohead nut, really. They are my favorite band.
Yeah.
I mean, so I like a lot of bands, but they are my favorite bands, so I'm not going to lie. Therefore, my 8th favorite album of theirs is still better than most bands' albums to me.
Yeah.
So
that's fair enough. I'll probably do the same with Dear Boy. Yeah, go on.
It sounds like I'm being harsh, but it's 8th in their canon, but it's tons better than, you know, anything that lots of other bands have done, like Oasis or bloody Kate Kasabian, or just, you know, rock like that, you know. So yeah, for me, it did catapult them, didn't it? A lot, you know, upwards, onto an upward trajectory, quite rightly, I think.
It did in this country, because, as I say before, Pablo Honey was big in America, and it did nothing in this country. Pop but Creep did, and then the Bends was massive in this country.
It was much more sonic as well. I mean, you know, just a fuller sound. It's quite big, isn't it? And yeah, it's a top quality album, but it is a rock album, which they gradually, obviously, decided, I'm not going to be Oasis or the Rolling Stones and just make the same album, you know, again and again and again, with decreasing success, if you like, which is what happens to most bands. So anyway, that's my take on it.
No, good stuff, Rod. I like that. Jeremy.
Well, this may be more or less controversial, I'm not sure, but my number 8 is actually The King of Limbs. The album was actually the first one after In Rainbows, the first physical Radiohead album I bought in a beautiful deluxe edition with the fake newspaper and that whole thing. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's pretty cool.
I've got
yeah, with the 10-inch record.
Yeah.
It's really, the packaging is fantastic. The packaging is superb. But the album itself, it was at the peak of their, you know, let's jam in the studio and then cut everything up and piece it back together. And it ends up being kind of airless, especially rhythmically. There's very little interaction between the band members, and they have such a great rhythm section. I do think that it's an accurate representation of where Tom York was emotionally, feeling very alienated. I think there was a breakup happening in his romantic life.
Yeah.
And I think it feels that way. It feels completely, everybody is separate. That said, seeing them in concert on that tour, the songs came to life and they were fantastic. I need to find a bootleg of that tour because it really transformed everything. Another place they were transformed was on the TKOL remix album. And I was thinking when that came out, I was like, well, this is what should have been the album. If you're going to chop up stuff and paste it back together, which is a method I highly endorse, by the way. Usually, you know, Miles Davis did that all the time. It makes for great records. But if you're going to do that, then go all the way with it. In a way, it feels polite. That said, there are some strong songs on there, and on the 10-inch release version that we have, the last side with Codex, Give Up the Ghost, and Separator is quite marvelous. That's a great sequence of songs. Lotus Flower is also great, and obviously the video made a big splash, really surprised people with his dancing. But on the whole, I have to give it 3.5 stars and have it at number 8. It just can be a little bit of a drag to listen to.
Okay, well, we've all got different number 8s because I've gone in with Amnesiac, which I like. I think it's a good album. I've given it 3 stars. I think it sounds like a bit of an outtakes album. I know some people might get annoyed at that, but that's the way I see it. I mean, there are some terrific rhythms on it. I think it's a really rhythmic-based album, possibly their most rhythmic-based album. But there are some really excellent songs that I really like on it. I mean, Pyramid Song's just fantastic, you know. Metaphysical song about death. Maybe he's referring to limbo, who knows. The opener's great, packed like sardines. It reminds me of the Bowie song, God Knows I'm Good, when he's pleading for something. Knives Out, good, very dark. I've written like Spinning Plates. I love the rhythmic feel of it again. I just love the rhythms on the album. Life in a Glass House, good. Having to go to sort of Daily Mail reading types, which is good. So it's a good album. It is a good album, and it's one of those I have no problems putting it on. And yeah, you go, yeah, it's good. I love the grooves on it. But compared to other albums that had either come either side, it doesn't hold up in my opinion. So hence the fact I've got it at number 8 and given it 3 stars. So it's a good album. It's definitely a good album, but there's much better to come for me. So Rod, what have you got at number 7?
Number 7, I've got A Moon-Shaped Pool, which again seems harsh having it at 7, really, because it's got a really great sort of flow and feel to it. I think, you know, the mood is just, you know, you can immerse yourself in it, and it's got some, as most of their albums from now on, really, it's got great songs on it. All their albums have got great songs on it. My favourites are Deck's Dark is probably my favourite track, along with Daydreaming and probably The Numbers and Identikit. I think probably they'd be my 4 standouts. Although I like all of them, except for Tinker Tailor's a little bit cinematic for me. I mean, I appreciate it, but I wouldn't listen to it as much with as much enthusiasm. But it's a really good album, and I'd give it a 4. Do I give the Benz a 4? Do I give the Benz a 4?
You did, yeah.
So one's got to be 7, one's got to be 8. So they're kind of, I've given them a similar rating, completely different albums.
No, that's fair enough. You can go for
the video for Daydreaming and Burn the Witch deserve a mention because they're completely different videos, but they're both fantastic videos in their own right. Personally, you know, something that, you know, the Burn the Witch one's just humorous, but it's a very powerful message.
I taught when I was teaching a bit of media studies. Sorry, I'm talking over you. I do apologise. When I was teaching media studies, Burn the Witch was one of the videos that was linked that you had to teach. So I was teaching it. So I taught it for A level to my eldest daughter. What a great video that is!
Red crosses on wooden doors. Yeah, the
links to Camwick Green and the Wicker Man and stuff is
fantastic. Yeah, and Daydreaming is just a very Tom. It's just Tom York in a nutshell. That video, really. Yeah. To be honest,
very, very, very clever. So good stuff.
And at the end of that song, isn't it? Allegedly, there's sort of a muffled thing at the very end, isn't it? And it's supposedly him saying half of my life backwards.
All right, okay.
Because his wife died.
Yeah.
Quite not long before it came out, I think. And he was married to her for half of his life.
Yeah.
That's what I read. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's quite
Oops.
nice if it. It's quite nice if it is.
Jeremy, what have you got at number 7?
Number 7 for me would be the Bends. Album 2 becomes number 7. I think it was a huge leap forward from Pablo Honey. Starting with Planet Telex, what a great sound to open it up with. And it just seems like they're becoming more sonically adventurous. The songs overall are more distinctive. The opening salvo of Planet Telex, the Bends, High and Dry. What a great trio of songs. High and Dry just has an unforgettable melody. So beautiful. And you can really feel like Tom York is coming into his own, able to loft those choruses in a way that just gets you right at the heart. Yeah, there are a couple of bland songs on there, but I think, like I said, I think it's transitional. Note that John Leckie was one of the producers. They hadn't fully gone all in with Nigel Godrich. So I think there were still some lingering after effects of the early years. But, Just is a great song, My Iron Lung. They start to also point a little bit towards OK Computer with some of the guitar architecture that Johnny Greenwood is able to put together and the sounds he's making. I mean, he really is an extraordinary artist. And obviously his arrangements are incredible. I think he's brilliant in so many different ways. But as an album I want to listen to over and over again, it's one I pull out now and then. And I think it's a solid number 7. I give it a 3.5, the same as King of Limbs. I just might want to listen to it a little more often than that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? For me, it's higher through personal thoughts in terms of getting into it at the time. I'm not saying it's necessarily better than some of the ones that I'd say higher than that, mind you, I must admit. And when I did go back over it again, it's been a while since I've listened to it, I thought, it's not as good as I used to remember it. So it shows you I don't play it that often. But I've got it higher, I have to be honest, probably through sentimental purposes. So my number 7 is King of Limbs. I've just gone over 3 stars. I think I'm sort of just over 3 stars territory. I think it's a good album. It's an album I didn't like at first when I first heard it, and it's really, really grown on it. It really has. And this, if you ask me in 6 months' time, this could be much higher. I think this is of all the albums, this might be the biggest grower. It was bizarrely, I think it was recorded at home and in Drew Barrymore's home, which is a bit weird. It's good. They've got, I think live they had is it Clive Deemer at Portishead playing with them as well. It was terrific. There's some really good songs on it. There's lots of Buddhist references throughout the whole album. I think that's the whole vibe in some respects, isn't it? And as you say, there are probably more better songs on here than some of the other albums, actually, when I look at it. I mean, I think Codex is absolutely fantastic. Really good lyrics. Some might say it's suicidal references. Some say it's Buddhism. Give Up the Ghost, I think, is very Blake, sort of poetry sort of feel to it. I really like the instrumental in Feral. I love Little by Little, just going back there in terms of the Spanish rhythmic feel to it. I also think something that's really prevalent in some of their stuff is this Brothers Grimm feel to some of the songs. And I think that happens certainly with Morning Mr. Magpie, which I think has definitely got that Brothers Grimm sort of lyric and feel to the whole thing. I think it's a really good album. I think it's a good album. 3. I'm gonna be a little go up in my rankings and give it 3.5. The more I think about it, I think it's more of a 3.5. So 3.5 for King of Limbs for me for number 7. So what have we got at number 6 then?
Is it me? Is it me now?
Yeah, it is, Rod. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was engrossed with your stuff there. Hail to the Thief is number 6 for me. I think it's been probably well documented and agreed. It's probably a bit long.
Yeah.
And I think they probably agreed that it was, and they just left stuff on there that maybe they shouldn't have done. But the high points are high, though. I would say that. The high points for me would be 2 + 2 = 5, which is probably one of the best rocky songs for me that they've ever done personally. There is similarly rocky, but in a much more kind of rhythmic, and it's just, I don't even know what it is. It's just a fantastic song there. The way it comes in and the vocals and the layers of the vocals. And I've also made a note of, I love Where I End and You Begin. Just the driving rhythm of that song, I absolutely love. But it is a little bit patchy, I would say, and disparate. It doesn't sort of. There's a lot of different stuff on there. Like "Go to Sleep" is kind of like an acoustic folk song, and then you've got "The Gloaming," and then you've got "We Suck Young Blood," and they're not really bad songs, but it's like, well, they're all over the place to me. I mean, I quite like "We Suck Young Blood" in isolation. It's okay, but it's just a bit. I wouldn't listen to it. Like Jeremy mentioned earlier, I probably wouldn't listen to it as much as some of the others. But the high points, I'd pluck songs from it to listen to, because I love the high points of it. Probably that's how I'd sum it up. I'd give it a 4 overall, just because the high points are so high that it drags the score up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Jeremy, what have you got?
I have Amnesiac at number 6. I think it's a really good album, but it definitely feels like the companion to Kid A. It feels like they sort of took all the stuff that was maybe a little too weird and put it all in one place, rather than maybe splitting it, making it 2 more varied albums. And sometimes I just think it gets a little up its own tail, if you will. Obviously, there's so many great songs on it. Morning Bell Amnesiac is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, and as well as Pyramid Song is just absolutely incredible. Knives Out. I mean, the whole album it's very good, but it just starts to feel like a little bit, how can we impress you by how weird we are? And I don't get on their case for taking on influences from, Warp bands and Aphex Twin and things like that. That's the way rock music evolves. That's the way things happen. I mean, Bowie, as we all know, took from Harmonia quite liberally and turned them into songs that you could really enjoy.
He did Red Sails, didn't he? Which is basically,
yeah, exactly.
He borrowed heavily, I think is the phrase I'm going to use, and sort of adapted.
But the fact that he was a songwriter, and I think maybe if their songwriting had been stronger on this album, it would have gotten over more. Obviously, it's a 4-star record. It's an enormous accomplishment in so many ways. But I do find myself sometimes getting a little bit frustrated with how much stuff they're just packing like sardines into this CD, So that's my number 6, 4 stars for Amnesiac.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, my number 6 is Hail to the Thief, game recorded 2003. It's a mishmash of styles, isn't it? Is the way I look at it. I've got exactly the same as yourselves. I've got written down here. The album is too long. And I've got the same points, Rod, that you said there before. There, 2.2, 2 plus 2 is 5 is absolutely fantastic. I've got Go to Sleep. It's almost got a Beatles rubber soul feel to it, which is, great. Where I End and You Begin, I like the claustrophobic beat on it. There is absolutely unbelievable. One of the best songs ever I've got written down here, and could be about a battle against depression. All of the same things that sort of Rod said before, really. I've got nothing else to add to it. It is that the highs are incredibly high on this. And I'm probably gonna go 3.5 stars, maybe just a bit more. If I was to give 3 3/4, that would be it. I think it's the length stops it from being a 4-star album for me. It's just too long, and it was the classic CD era thing where people try and cram a CD and fill it, and you think, no, just put 9 or 10 songs that equal 45 minutes on. Thank you very much, and that'll be perfect. But there we have it. What have you got at number 5? Rod, what have you got 5?
Well, I've got the much maligned King of Limbs at 5, because I really like it, and I know you guys have already had it lower down, but you've sort of conceded within your assessments that there's some fantastic songs on it, and there is, and I know they did record it in a different fashion, and it has got a different sound. I still think it's got a really kind of cool vibe, though. Really, I think it's got a vibe to it, and songs like Bloom, for example, which I thought it just sounds exactly like what it's on about. Plankton, that bloom of plankton and floating along the seabed. I just imagine floating along the seabed with headphones on, with that on full blast. It just is that. And Codex is like Pyramid Song 2. To me, it's just fantastic. Separator is just got this sort of groovy bass line thing, and it's just, you just drift off into aceness really on that. And I like Give Up the Ghost. There's only really Feral, which is just a bit of an electronic, sort of, I don't know, it's instrumental, but that's the sort of weakest song. Even Mr. Magpie is probably one of the weaker ones, and I don't think it's that weak. It's quite short, and I just think it's a great album, and I don't understand why people. I mean, it did get poor reviews, and it's probably because it followed In Rainbows. Because any album that followed In Rainbows is probably going to, suffer a bit, maybe.
Yeah, expectations were high for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I'd give it. I love it, so I'd give it a 4.5.
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. We're up
controversially, mate.
No, well, we're up to classic territory there. Then, so Jeremy, what have you got?
I love it.
No, I think it's fair enough. There's no right answer. There's no right answer.
Exactly.
So that's absolutely fine. So, Jeremy, what have you got next then?
Number 5, I have OK Computer.
Oh,
now, this may be.
Sorry, I'm just gonna get back up on my chair. Come on.
I'll see you at 5.
I thought there were
I really wasn't expecting that at all. But go on.
No,
I know people have said this is the greatest album of the 2000s. I just don't quite agree, or the 90s, or. It's just one of those albums to me where all the parts are there, but you can see the spaces between them. You can see the calculations in the production. It still feels, I like it a lot now, whereas when I first heard it, I dismissed it. I thought they were trying to be Pink Floyd, and it wasn't really working out. Pink Floyd and the Beatles kind of mashed up, wasn't all there, but it just does not completely gel for me. Songs are good. Obviously, I've heard them in concert, and they're fantastic. When they play them live, they've mastered every change, they fill all the spaces. I just feel like it's got some issues for me. That said, I give it 4.5 stars. I mean, it's a tremendous achievement, but it's just got that schematic feel. Like, we're putting everything together. We've got our blueprint. This is our blueprint. We're only going to go forward from here. And although my ranking disproves that with King of Limbs lower, I just feel that it's just not all there for me. Obviously, there are so many good songs on it. When you hear a song like No Surprises, you're like, this is the song John Lennon would have written had he lived. This is like the return of that attitude plus artistry. It's a hard combination to achieve. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And I love that they were breaking up rock and roll and not just going along with what they started on the Bends. But on the whole, I feel like it's a work in progress, and they're not quite there.
Wow. I'm 4.5 still. It's a classic album, 4.5 as well. Right. I'm genuinely shocked. It's not often I'm lost for words. My number 5 is the Bends. I've given it 4 stars. It's, as we said, the breakthrough album. But the problem I've got with this album, and it's not much of a problem, but it is a problem, is that this is the album that probably helped spawn the likes of Coldplay and all those sorts of bands. I think they took the template and just ran with it. And I can see why later on in life, Tommy Oakner got really knocked, I think is the polite way of saying it, about all these, as they describe them, copycat bands. I know people talk about Muse and that, but they've gone off into a real prog area, and I see them as a totally different type of band now. I totally agree. Initially, when you hear them, you go, "Oh, they sound just like Radiohead," and now he's Muse. They're their own entity, and have become a terrific band. But yeah, so that's my one gripe. But as an album, there's a theme running throughout it, which I like. You obviously got the references to depression within it. I mean, Planet Telex is good song. The Bends is just great. High and Dry, mentioned earlier on, one of the great songs, I think. They have lots of references about fake, like fake lives, fake reality, whatever it might be. I forgot the name of the film now. I should have written it down. Even the art cover reminds me of Minority. Is it Minority Report? Is that what they call it? With
Tom Cruise.
Cruise.
Tom
Yeah.
Cruise.
You know, when they're all plugged
Bird.
in and stuff. And it sort of reminds me a little bit like that as well, how the fake reality stuff. So I don't know why. I don't know why I got that, but it just comes to my mind there. But there's lots of references to fake there. Nice Dream. I absolutely love Nice Dream. It's just a fantastic song. Just, you've got the John McGeoch influences on the guitar there. You know, you've definitely got that sort of magazine, Susie and the Banshees feel with regards to it. Terrific tune, really heavy. Could have been on the earlier stuff, actually, when you think about it. Black Star, I've just written. And then Street Spirit, fantastic. Absolutely incredible song. It's a good 4-star album for me. It really is a game changer in some respects. And as I say, many bands use this as the template and they just ripped it off. And basically their whole career is based on this album. You know, I love the fact that the Radiohead were clever enough, a bit like other bands like The Clash, were clever enough to progress and move on and do something else rather than just sit in that little pigeonhole. So 4 stars for me for the bend there. That's my number 5. What have we got at number 4 there?
Well, my number 4 is a lot of people's number 1. My number 4 is Kid A, which again, it's a great album, and I get that it's more of an album in terms of an album as an entity than some of the others. Maybe, you know, I get that, but I've done a lot of my rankings based on the songs that I like on the albums rather than how good is it as an album. So I appreciate it's a good album, but I prefer songs off other albums more than I do. That sounds like a contradiction in terms, because everything in its right place, the ones I've written down, everything in its right place is.
Yeah, because Kid A is not an album you can dip into, is it? It's a start to finish album where other albums you might dip in.
I to a point, but everything in its right place. I listen to it a lot just as a song. It's just, I just love it, and I love Idiotech, which is a completely different song because of the tempo and all the rest of it. But so everything in its right place, and Idiotech and How to Disappear Completely. Those 3 songs are just epically fabulous songs, in completely different, really, in terms of tempo and sound. All fantastic, but you know, when Jeremy mentioned the weird bits on Amnesiac, I think earlier, the weirder bits on Kid A are less successful than the weirder bits on Amnesiac to me. Like Kid A, motion picture soundtrack, Tree Fingers, those other bits are less successful than the Amnesiac bits that would be regarded as similar to me. And Optimistic, I've made notes here, just put Optimistic double question mark. I don't know what Optimistic, talking about it being a cohesive album, why is Optimistic on that album? It sounds like it should be on the Bends or something to me. It's a conventional rock track in the middle of an album that's the opposite of a conventional rock album. I don't understand. I've never understood why Optimistic. It's not a bad song. It's a sort of quite a Radioheady song, but it's just, it just didn't belong on the album to me. I've got no idea why it's on the album. And that's why, yeah, maybe that's why it just annoys me that it's on there. Maybe that's why that's Kid A's number 4. And by the way, I haven't mentioned the national anthem, which is a sort of a force of nature as well, really. But it just, it does kind of, hits you in the face, doesn't it? And it has this sort of jazz solo section as well, that horn section, which is proper full on, isn't it? And really good live, that is. I mean, I remember this, the first time I seen them live, they played the national anthem. All their songs are good live, but some songs you think, well, how are they going to do that live? You know, Bloom was another one, and ones you just think, well, how the hell are you going to do that live? And the national anthem live was just like, Jesus, I couldn't believe it. It was just fantastic. Yeah, so it's a 4.5-star album because it's fantastic, but it's, for me, it's got a few more flaws than my top 3, so that's why it's 4.
Okay, interesting. Jeremy, what have you got at number 4?
Number 4 for me is Hail to the Thief. I agree it's a little long, but I love the variety of it. I think that really they pull it off, and the crazy song titles and everything. It's just a wild ride. I 2 + 2 equals 5. We've all agreed is a great song. I love Go to Sleep. It's just fantastic. Mixomatosis is really good. I just ride the whole album through. I let them take me away. I don't question too much about what's going on in this album. I think it sort of pulled together everything from Kid A and Amnesiac, put it all in one place, and everything in its right place. And it's just a really interesting panoramic album. I gave it 4.5 stars as well. Tremendous stuff.
No, good, interesting. We've got quite different choices here, so that's cool. That's why I love stuff like that. Well, my number 4 is a Moon-Shaped Pool. I've just written here a very somber album. I've given it 4.5 stars. I think it's excellent. And again, it's grown more and more the more I listen to it. Burn the Witch, we've talked about, just class. Daydreaming, great song, but Paranoia. Reminds me of Peter Gabriel's song, We Do What We're Told. It really has that sort of feel about it, I really like that. I like that a lot. Some just great songs on it. The whole album's really just top drawer. Dex Dogs, great, but Breaking Up. Desert Island Disc. It's almost Desert Island Disc. The song about moving on from a relationship, but it's actually got this sort of Led Zeppelin acoustic feel to it as well, which is really unusual for them. It's so different to anything I've heard them do before. I really love it. Full Stop, spelt incorrectly, which I quite like, made me laugh. And again, it's got a noise feel to it. I love that metronomic sort of drum feel to it. Terrific. There's the odd one as well, like True Love Waits was written in 95, which is, again, unusual, but it fits perfectly on the album. It's a great album. It really is. It's a really sad album, as we said before there. I think his wife dies not long after. There's a lot going on. It's obviously very, very personal, but it's a fantastic album. It really is. It's not an album you're going to play on a Friday night to go on a night out, but but you might play on a Sunday morning. Fabulous. Really, really great album. So 4.5 stars for me. So what have we got next? What's in at number 3?
Number 3 for me is In Rainbows. Number 3 for me.
Yeah.
Their top 3 albums to me are kind of really close because I love all 3 really, but you've got to rank them, haven't you? So
yeah.
Obviously the whole pay what you want thing was pretty cool and groundbreaking, and I paid full price because I'm a fan, but I'm just telling you that I did. But I mean, it's quite cool. You decided what you thought it was worth, which is kind of just a cool thing to do. But it's so kind of one thing I've made a note of, I think, is that from In Rainbows onwards, his voice is better to me. He's maybe he's a little bit older. There's more depth to it. It's more soulful. Some of the vocals on In Rainbows and the albums after that, his vocals are just on a different level to earlier in their career, massively so. And things like my favorite songs like Reckoner and Nude, particularly vocally. And he did Nude live, and it's on point. It's absolutely fantastic. And my other favorite tracks would probably be Weird Fishes, which is just arpeggi. That whole bit where there's a breakdown in the middle, where again it goes all kind of a bit sort of bottom of the oceany and a bit, and then the drum, when the drums come back in and lift it again, it's just constructed fantastically. I love that song. I could listen to it forever. Leanne, have you heard Leanne La Havas cover of it?
No.
R&B. Yeah, she did. She played it live at Glastonbury a few years ago. It's one of her favourite songs. She's an R&B artist, really, but she's done a cover. It's on YouTube, I think, but she did a cover of it, which is really good. Weird Fishes. And Videotape I love, which is very simplistic, but they're the masters of. I've made a note here. They're the masters of. They're piano simplicity gods to me. Like, you've got Videotape, you've got Codex, you've got. And obviously Pyramid Song is probably at the top of those, but Daydreaming, those type of songs where you just think, well, there's not a lot, they're quite simplistic songs, but they're not really, because other people will write them, wouldn't they? So right. But they are just yeah, just gods of that kind of song. And Videotape is no exception. It's a great album closer.
Even better than when Tom York wheels out the old broken down piano on stage and just plays solo. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
I know exactly, and
he just bangs it out, and he's like hunched over it.
Yeah, and that story, you're probably aware of that story where Neil Young does a benefit gig every year, doesn't he? And he invited Tom York, whatever year it was, I can't remember what the year was. He invited Tom York because they were pretty big, and he's a hero. One of his heroes. Neil Young is one of Tom York's heroes, sort of thing, and influences. And he was ran Neil Young's house the evening before, and he said, I want to do a version of, I want to do After the Gold Rush. Is it you okay if I do? That's my song that I want to sing. And he says, yeah, that's fine. Do you want to use the piano that the original piano that I did it on the album? So and Tom York was like beside himself, thought, what, seriously? And he allowed him to play it live on the piano that he used for the After the Gold Rush album. Which is kind of cool, that whole,
yeah, it's great, lads.
Just generations coming together, and respecting each other, and just, because Tom, they're on a similar level. They're great songwriters, and he did After the Gold Rush first, but I'm sure he'd like, Neil Young had liked Pyramid Song as much as he likes After the Gold Rush. So it's a cool thing. So yeah, to me, being a nut, these are my top 3 albums, so they'll all be 5-star ones. So it's a 5-star album for me.
Okay, good choice. Good choice. No. Jeremy, what have we got next then? What's your number 3?
My number 3 is Kid A. It really is quite a perfect album. This is the one, there was such a struggle to make it. I think they overcame a lot of resistance even within the band towards this new direction. I think some of the guys just wanted to rock, and York and Greenwood were on a whole other trip. Just those first chords of Everything in Its Right Place, it just puts you in a mood. It really is extraordinary. The national anthem obviously is one of the greatest bass lines of all time. I mean, you hear that and you just get amped for it. The jazz breakdown of I sometimes I get a little squirrely about it, because I'm sort of like, what do they think? They're not Charles Mingus, but they get away with it just through sheer energy and guts. And Idioteque, Morning Bell, the whole album really holds together. Maybe Optimistic is one of the weaker songs. I guess if it was on vinyl, that might start side 2. Not the best placement, but I really, really liked the album a lot. And it was impressive to me that they were, even after OK Computer was a big leap forward and definitely stranger than what people were expecting, this was the one where I was like, aha, these guys are true art rockers. They're continuing the tradition of the Beatles and just pushing everything as far forward as possible, not taking any sound for granted, putting sounds, not only using synthesizers, but synthesizing sounds by putting them next to each other. It's such an important thing to do. But it still has that energy that you get on something like the Bends or parts of OK Computer, where they're, you can tell that there's like blood and guts at the heart of it all. I really, really like Kid A. I give it 4.5 stars just because it is magnificent, but it's not quite perfect.
Right, okay, interesting. Well, my number 3 is In Rainbows, and I've given that 4.5 stars. It is a great album. I mean, so many top songs on this album. 15 Step. I love the intro, the hand clap rhythm. I love the groove, about being stuck in something mundane, but it's quite exciting feel. Again, Body Snatchers. Again, I've written 9 next to it there, and it's got like a drone feel to it there. A fabulous song. Nude is just magnificent. I've written here, it was written for OK Computer. You can sort of tell it would have fitted in really well, although they changed the bass line. A song about being put in your place, having your dreams destroyed. As a northerner, I'm going to get political for a second. You sort of knew it at the time in the 80s, growing up under Thatcher. It definitely had that. So he's almost writing from our perspective. It's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. The voice is fantastic on it. Weird Fish is great. It's just it is a top album. House of Cards I really like. Just again very clever. And Jigsaw's Falling into Pieces. I've just got written great song next to it. That excitement of connecting with somebody. It's almost one of the most fun songs I think that they've ever recorded. But it's a terrific album. 4.5 stars. And like yourselves, I remember buying the download at the time. I thought it was such a novel idea and a very clever idea. Loved it. So yeah, that's my number 3. Without the big 2 now. Rod, what have you got in at number 2?
Yeah, well, quite at odds with you two guys, but my number 2 is Amnesiac, which
right.
Well, I love the album. I prefer it to. It's a bit jazzier. It's warmer than Kid A. Some of my favourite songs of theirs are on it. Which again, if you're extracting songs out, Pyramid Song's right up there with possibly one of the best songs I've ever done. Really, You and Who's Army, love it. I Might Be Wrong. Knives Out has got just a great little groove to it. Love the lyrics to it as well. Got quite a fun video as well, actually. Knives Out, hasn't it? And then the slightly, I think Jeremy alluded to it earlier, the slightly artier, up your own backside aspect, like the life in a glass house and hunting bears and things, but it kind of works really. And I don't really see it as outtakes because obviously they were from the same sessions, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether this is my personal opinion, because Kid A came out and was Kid A and was, what it did and the reaction to that. I think because it came out a year later and it was known that it was from the same session, just like it's going to suffer, isn't it? Because people think, well, they're the ones that didn't get on Kid A. It's just psychologically, and I think the best songs on Amnesiac, in some ways surpass a lot of the songs on Kid A for me personally, apart from maybe Everything in Its Right Place and How to Disappear. There's probably 3 on Kid A that are singled out, but as a whole, I just love the warm sort of jazzy feel of Amnesiac. It's just, it kind of envelops me in sort of warmth and Radioheadedness. Is that a word? It's just so them and fantastically them. That's why it's number 2 for me, and it's 5 stars. My top 3 5 stars. So yeah, that's my take on that.
No, I love the fact that we've all got different choices. That's great. Jeremy, what have you got in at number 2?
Number 2 for me is A Moon-Shaped Pool. Up till now, their last album. Will we get another one? Can't be sure. I know some people were concerned that there were some very old songs they pulled together on this album, like True Love Waits, which have been kicking around since the 90s. But it's just such a polished gem. Every song is so carefully put together, but it still has a lot of life in it. And when you think that, there's echoes of Nick Drake and the Beatles, obviously, I always think of them as a post-Rubber Soul band. They don't really look back to early rock and roll or soul or anything like that. But they're starting on In Rainbows, and on this album too, there are increasing lines of modern R&B, modern soul music. And I think that's part of Tom York's voice growing, him being able to, harness its powers in different ways. I remember when I reviewed this album, I said that Kalela should cover one of the songs. I just think that would be so cool to have somebody from that world take all the influences and put them into that arena. It's just such a gorgeous album. And the lyrics, some of the lyrics are really incredible. When he has that song about, I just got off the train and everybody looks, gray faces and that sort of thing. We've all had that experience. Sometimes you're on the train and you just look around and you're like, who are all these people? And they look weird to you for whatever reason, but it's all internal, isn't it? They just look like normal people. But depending on your point of view, I've never heard anybody capture that sensation of being utterly separate from everybody. Obviously, this is a long-term theme in York, starting with Creep. I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. He's always felt like the outsider, but I think now he brings to it a certain maturity to the lyric writing that is psychologically incisive, I have to say. And just sonically, I really felt like everybody in the band was able to do their best work. Whereas on King of Limbs, you feel like the drumming is a little bit sidelined. Now we're just going to chop it up and make it mechanical. You don't have any input really into what the ultimate sound is going to be. In this one, I feel like, nope, the drummer's in there, the bass player, everybody is working together. And it just feels like a beautiful unified piece. If it is their final album as a band, obviously the Smile is York and Greenwood to the max. It's a wonderful keystone point in their career. I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. And obviously you can see over my shoulder, the packaging once again is just ridiculous. I had to buy the deluxe edition with the, it's got a snippet of magnetic tape, half-inch tape from a recording session that could go back as far as Kid A, they say. It's just such a beautiful object that I think it houses the album quite nicely. It's a pretty perfect album. There's really nothing bad you can say about it. I gave it 5 stars.
Good choice. Again, this, as I say, for me, there's a couple of these albums that will rise over time. King of Limbs being one, and that one being the other. I think they're the two for me that are just going to go higher and higher in terms of giving them higher stars. Right. Well, my number 2, I was literally torn. If I could have a joint number 1, I would. And I'm going to try and appease my friend Simon, who sent me his list. And so I've gone. So for number 1, I've appeased him, and I'm going for my number 2 is Kid A. I've given it 5 stars. I think it's a masterpiece. Clearly influenced by the likes of Kraftwerk, Can, Neu, Bowie, and in many respects, and I know harp on about David Bowie, but there really is a similarity in terms of going from Young Americans to Low. Is that sudden like woof, that sort of 180 degree sort of move.
Station to station was in between, of course.
Yeah. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, it was. But you get what I'm trying to say within a very short period of time, and it's like a massive jump. And I see the same sort of thing. They've just suddenly put the handbrakes on and spun round, and we're going to do something totally different. I love that. I love it when bands and artists take a chance because they're prepared to fall down and be humiliated in some respects, and clearly they weren't. It's a fantastic album. It really is a great album. I've written a number of notes here, but I'll be very quick. I think everything in its right place. I love the Kraftwerk beat about it. Just great. National Anthem sounds a bit like Massive Attack, Portishead. I love their bass. It's brilliant, Is it condemning institutions like the royal family or not, or whatever it might be? Who knows? A lot of these lyrics are open to your own interpretation, which I like. I don't like people this is about that and this is about that. I like the fact that he leaves it fairly open. How to Disappear, completely very sad song, beautiful vibe. Three Fingers, I really love it. I love it. It's a haunting instrumental. Optimistic, I've written, just got a good drum beat. In Limbo, again, replicates the lyrics. Living in a Fake World, that fake reference again. Fantasy, it's multi-layered. I've written Idiotech, song about global warming and destruction, but again, terrific. Fits in with the idea of the whole fin de siècle theme, the end of the century paranoia that people have. A bit of English thrown in there for people. And then Motion Picture Soundtrack, again, it sort of doesn't fit on the album, is what I've written here. But it's good. But for me, it doesn't sort of work. It doesn't sort of go on the album, but it's still a great song. It's just a fantastic album, a really top album, groundbreaking, which is a word I don't use very often because there's not many great groundbreaking albums, but this really is. I just think it's top draw, 5 stars all day long. Could easily be my number 1, but keep Sam happy. There you go. It's not. So, Rod, what have we got at number 1 then?
Yeah, well, maybe predictably, OK Computer is my number 1 album, and I know that I take on board what Jeremy said earlier. It's earlier in their career, but at the same time, it's the album that I alluded to earlier that got me properly into them. It stopped me in my tracks. Even now, like if you listen to Airbag, the riff, it's like, what is that? Almost. It's like it is a guitar riff, but it kind of isn't. it even sounds like the drums are slightly offbeat. You know, it sounds as great today as it did in '97 to me. Airbag, you know, just as an intro to an album, you think, what is that? What's going on? And the lyrics are quite literal, but at the same time, absolutely great. Paranoid Android is obviously Paranoid Android. It's probably been overplayed, maybe, but it's still, it's like a Bohemian Rhapsody. Apparently, it was Happiness Is a Warm Gun was an influence because of the 3-part structure sort of thing. Let's make this sort of epic thing. But to me, it's got one of the best breakdowns in rock history. To me, you know, Rain Down, especially live, when he does the whole Rain Down thing live, it's just hymnal, and you know, it's like a religious experience kind of thing. And to do that, to go from the Bends to that, you know, it was a massive leap. I know it's still a guitar-based album, but it was truly groundbreaking, which is probably why it's isn't it in the USA? I made a note somewhere. The Library of Congress, is it called?
Oh, is it right? Okay.
But it's basically a cultural significance kind of situation. So, and it was, and it still sounds fantastic. Now, exit music, you know, I hope that you choke, you know, just that ending, you know, just the way it just kind of, you know, absolutely fantastic. No surprises, like someone mentioned earlier. It's like the sort of thing that, you know, Lennon might have wrote. You think, you know, easy songs are easy to write, aren't they? But they're not. Really, you know, it's kind of a lullaby, or it's really simplistic, but it's not, is it? It's just a great song. You know, it's like a fantastic song. No surprises. And then I also like Subterranean Homesick Alien. I've always liked the whole the feel of that song and the chorus. You know, the whole uptight thing and being taken away and looking down at earth and wanting to see it as I'd like to see it, and then telling your friends and them thinking you're a nutter, and you know, it just paints a picture, but in a kind of beautiful way. But yeah, I just think, you know, it is a seminal piece of work, and I think Jeremy mentioned earlier, because the Beatles have been mentioned a little bit. You know, I personally, because the Beatles are probably my second favorite band, and they are, because to me, and I appreciate Pink Floyd and lots of there's loads of other great bands, but to me, the Beatles and Radiohead are the two best British bands of all time. To me, simple as that. You know, and for the similar reasons in a way. Except one did everything in 7 years and the other ones took 30 odd years. So the time frame in what you've produced is quite massively.
No one beats the Beatles' work ethic.
Well, no, exactly. Yeah, to do what they did in 7 years is unprecedented, and, you know, will never be repeated. But I think that, you know, these guys have come closest since, for me. You know, and yeah, I'm glad they came along. You know, and yeah, that's me. OK Computer's #1, and yeah. Brilliant.
Interesting. Yeah, go on. Jeremy, what have you got at #1 then?
My #1 is the only one that's left, In Rainbows. I could be biased towards this album slightly because it was the first one that I really got into. As I said before, after listening to The Eraser, this one came out and I thought, okay, I'll pay my £8.99 for it online. I felt that was a reasonable price. And I was just astonished at how good it was. It's an absolutely masterful album. It has the sonic adventure of the earlier stuff, but there's that R&B influence. I remember I played it for a friend who was a fan of theirs but hadn't heard it yet. And he goes, "Oh, Tom York coming out with the soul." You know, he's just so soulful on that album. Yeah. But the construction of the songs is just fascinating. It is as musically adventurous and innovative as the, you know, Bowie, Visconti, the great years where they were just doing everything together. Bowie, Visconti, Eno. And then you have Radiohead and Nigel Godrich. Just there's a certain kind of polish to it, but there's a lot of guts to it too, and still a lot of variety. More variety, I would say, than A Moon-Shaped Pool. It has more moods to it, more rhythmic adventure. But I mean, I remember, and I played it for my wife, and she's just like, "Oh my God, I haven't heard anything like this in years, since Bowie, since like Scary Monsters or something like that." You know, where you're just, or it also reminds me of something like Outkast, where they put every sound, they just kind of pull every sound out and they stretch it up and then they put it back in. and you're like, yeah, I've never heard a drum beat like that before, but it's so funky. So it's kind of the same thing within Rainbows. I think it's rather ironic. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, and the only place I own it is on that iPod back there. I mean, it's on my old desktop computer too, but I really should have a physical edition of this thing. It's just such a perfect piece of work. It's 5 stars all the way. It's a touchstone album for me. And partly, like I said, because it was the first one I got into, it was such a beautiful gateway to the wonders of the Radiohead catalog. That's my number 1 in Rainbows.
Yeah, well, my number 1 is OK Computer. Tied really, but there you have it. It is a masterpiece. There is a real strong argument that this is, for me, as I say, possibly the best album of the last 25 years or so. It's certainly up there. I've got a couple of others that I really love, like Black Star and that, but this is just, I think it's just magnificent. Start to finish, Airbag, brilliant. The idea of surviving the car crash. We've talked about Paranoid Android and Homesick Alien, great. Exit music, I love. Because it features a bit in Romeo and Juliet as well, and I absolutely love it. And the lyrics fit perfectly. My least favorite song on it's Let Down, and even that's really good. Karma Police, brilliant. Fitter, Happier. I love stuff like that. I love that sort of computer thing going on. I just think that's stuff. When I hear stuff like that, I go, oh, brilliant. It's like something you get on Dark Side of the Moon, And I think that's where you get the Floyd references to them with regards to this, that little weird sort of thing going on that Floyd did. Just it is a tremendous album, Electioneer and Climb Up the Walls. No surprises. Fantastic. It's one of the most iconic guitar intros, isn't it? And again, maybe he's played to death. Everybody knows what you usually hear the guitar riff and the glockenspiel, you know what it is, but it's brilliant. Lucky reminds me, I've got written here Jeff Buckley, which that's a great compliment in my opinion. And again, I've written Pink Floyd in brackets. The Tourist again, brilliant, and it ties back to Airbag. And again, I've written Pink Floyd. So it's, for me, very much got that sort of vibe to it, It is a magnificent album, a proper masterpiece album. And yeah, it deserves all the accolades. And as I say, for me, for the fact that they just binned it and went and did Kid A's just as big as sort of, is just as fantastic, because you could have easily gone, right, let's make the next one. Let's make,
Yeah, they could have made OK Computer too. Nobody would.
Yeah, and I love it when artists take chances and just say no, because we've heard all the same bands doing the same album 100 times over, Oasis, and so on and so forth, But brilliant. So there we go. Interesting choices, and again, it makes us want to go back and start playing them again now. So, folks, let us know what your lists are. Remember to subscribe to the channel. I keep forgetting to mention it. Please do. And please click the like button. We need some more people to sort of follow along there. And if you want to come along and join on the show like these two gents, you're more than welcome to do so as well. So until the next time, folks, send in your lists. Take care. Look after yourself. Goodbye.